Hey there, guys. Welcome to the 19th episode of Daily Word Webs to Bell the Cat. I'll give you my introduction and tell you about my credentials towards the end of the session. Well, maybe time knows it all. There's a concept, there's an idea. In fact, there are many thinkers who used to believe in the 19th century, many 19th century and 20th century thinkers used to believe that uh, all the mysteries of the universe can be solved if one can really look into time, right? That's the most fundamental area that one needs to look into if they want to solve the mysteries of the universe. So yeah, so maybe time knows it all. Who knows? So anyhow, so that also happens to be the root for today. The roots that we'll be taking up today are tempor or tempo. They are the same forms of, they are two different forms of the same root, and both of them stand for time. So yes, let's start. Uh, as I said, both of these terms are the variants of the same root, tempor and tempo. They come from the Latin language and they stand for time. Okay, and there are other roots which stand for time, like chrono. I think this is the root that we discussed in the last session, right? So, which also stands for time. So, let's start with the words. Let's say there's a archaeologist, right? Have you seen this movie Indiana Jones? आपने देखा होगा, right? I think he plays the character of a professor. The Indiana Jones itself is the character of a professor of archaeology, right? And archaeology is the study of ancient ruins. Word that we'll look into in one of the upcoming sessions. So वहाँ पे let's say Indiana Jones comes across maybe some ruins, कुछ तो ऐसे archaeological sites पे कुछ बहुत ही पुराने ruins या fossils मिलते हैं, and when he tries to get them dated back, कि हाँ ये to figure out कि कब के ruins है, कौन से era के ruins है, he finds that those ruins are from the same era as the Indus Valley civilization. Okay, you must have heard of this, right? You must have read about this in your school, Indus Valley civilization. So, in such a scenario, is there a word that we can use to say, okay, these, these fossils come from the same time as the time when we had the Indus Valley civilization, right? So if we were to use a word in this context, अगर यहाँ पे कोई एक शब्द use करना हो जो कि काफी apt होगा, it will be this word, which is contemporaneous. Contemporaneous. So you can say that, okay, the new fossils found by Indiana Jones at this XYZ site, after being dated, have been found to be contemporaneous with the time when the Indus Valley civilization was kind of active in the area, right? Existed. So that means that these fossils existed at the same time or occurred in the same period as Indus Valley civilization did, right? जिस period में ये civilization रहा था past में history में, उसी time पे ये fossils भी उस समय के ही हैं. So contemporaneous basically means existing or occurring in the same period or era. It doesn't necessarily have to relate with just historical records. It can also relate with someone, things that you might be doing in the present, which right. So doing an act contemporaneously, as Rahul completed writing his final essay, he contemporaneously thought about what he will do next, right? So as he was completing, so at the same time, that means at the same point of time, as he completed writing his essay itself, उसी समय वो ये भी सोच रहा था कि वो अगली चीज क्या करेगा. So it can be used in the present context as well. Okay. So let's go to the next. Okay, by the way, from contemporaneous, there are many other terms that we can take, right? For example, contemporary, right? You must have heard of this. Contemporaries, your contemporary are people who live in the same era as you, right? For example, if I were to talk about Jung and Freud, right? Jung and Freud are considered to be, like, whenever you think about psychology, psychology के domain में जैसे ही आप कुछ, like, if you start doing some reading, the classics will generally, and the ideas will generally come from either Jung or Freud in most cases, right? And these were people who lived in the same era, right? So Freud came first and was kind of from whatever little I've read, was kind of a mentor to Jung for some time, right? So they live in the same era, एक ही era में रह रहे थे, तो इनको हम लोग क्या बोलेंगे? They will be considered as contemporaries. Okay, RIES form हो जाएगा यहाँ पे because plural है, so they will be considered as contemporary. Okay, so or you can say there is this contemporary music, right? The contemporary art. Contemporary music is the music that is currently ongoing, that is currently in vogue, that is currently in fashion. Contemporary fashion भी हो सकता है, right? So contemporary is like what is going on in the present, right? So yes. अच्छा, by the way, let's look at the etymology. The contemporary में and even contemporaneous में, the first part of the words, these words come from the root con that stands for together with. That stands for together with. Okay, so if you, when you say that Jung and Freud were contemporaries, that means, and then temp, obviously temp, the temp part here obviously comes from tempo, that means time. That means they were together at the same time, right? They lived in the same era, right? That's why they were contemporaries, right? Or we see, or if you say कि हाँ contemporary music आप सुनना पसंद करते हैं, that means you like to listen to the time to the music of today, जो आजकल music जो चल रहा है, right? So that means of the same time, which is of the same time as you are, right? Which in the present, right? So that's contemporary for you. That brings us to another term, which is temporary. So what is temporary? Contemporary तो ये हो गया. Temporary की बात करेंगे, आप बोलते हैं कि नहीं यार ये तो it's kind of a temporary thing. Let's see. I'm actually looking out for better profiles. You know, if someone is searching for a job and like हाँ ठीक है ये वाला तो ऐसे ही उठा लिया है for अभी के लिए, अभी थोड़ी आगे जाके we're gonna look for better profiles. So this is temporary, means that is only for the time being, right? So when you say something is temporary, you mean that something only for the for time being. Okay, let me write that too. Yeah. So okay, so that's contemporary for you. What else can we have? Okay, ठीक है, चलो next word पे चलते हैं. The next word we have is temporize. Okay, so you must have heard of this term procrastinate, right? Procrastinate आपने शायद सुना होगा, which uh, used to be a low frequency word, I think maybe a decade ago, but now I think it's a term that almost everyone has heard of. Procrastinate basically means to keep putting off something. कोई भी चीज़ को टालते जाना कि नहीं ठीक है यार आज नहीं करना, कल करेंगे इसको, परसों करेंगे इसको, right? So that's procrastinate for you. And temporize kind of has a similar meaning. So to temporize something is to keep from making a decision or commitment until later. कि मतलब होता है ना कि नहीं ये काफ़ी, you know, sometimes you'll have some friends, आप एक बार सोच के देखेंगे तो आपको ध्यान में अपने आप आएगा कि कुछ ऐसे आपके दोस्त होंगे जो कि जो डिसीजन एकदम उस टाइम पे नहीं बताएंगे. दे ऑलवेज बी लाइक कि नहीं ठीक है ओके हाँ ठीक है चलो इसको देखते हैं. इनफैक्ट वी आल्सो डू इट क्वाइट ऑफन, राइट? So what we are doing whenever we are putting off a decision, what we are doing is we are leaving it up to time. हम उसको टाइम के ऊपर छोड़ दे रहे हैं कि जब टाइम आएगा तब देखा जाएगा. We'll cross the bridge when we come to it. That's an idiom, by the way, right? So cross the bridge when we come to it, right? That means कि ठीक है जब वो आएगा तब देखा जाएगा. That means you're keeping yourself from making any commitment in the present, and then just saying that you're temporizing the decision until later, right? So that's temporize for you. To delay, to procrastinate or to delay is to temporize. Okay, let's go on to the next term then that we have, which is temporal. Okay, now you must have you heard of spatial, right? स्पेशियल रीजनिंग करके एक एस्पेक्ट होता है काफ़ी जो इंटेलिजेंस टेस्ट में चेक किया जाता है. स्पेशियल कम्स फ्रॉम द वर्ड स्पेस. ओके, एंड so spatial is anything that relates to space. Similarly, temporal is anything that relates to time, right? So our reality mainly comprises of spatial and temporal elements. इसका मतलब क्या हुआ कि आपका जो रियलिटी आपके आसपास जो भी ये ब्रह्मांड है, इसमें जो मेनली प्राइमरी जो आपसे इसके एलिमेंट्स हैं, दे आर स्पेस एंड टाइम, राइट? दैट्स व्हाट वी सी अराउंड आवरसेल्फ, राइट? हमारे आसपास हमें वी सी ऑब्जेक्ट्स व्हिच आर सिचुएटेड इन स्पेस एट अ सर्टेन पॉइंट इन स्पेस एंड एट अ सर्टेन पॉइंट इन टाइम, राइट? दिस रिमाइंड्स मी ऑफ अ वंडरफुल बुक दैट यू कैन कंसिडर रीडिंग. मैं इसको यहाँ पे आपके लिए लिख देता हूँ. I think that it's called The Time Traveler by H.G. Wells. One of the very classical books, you know. So The Time Traveler by H.G. Wells, you know, in this book, there's a very at the very start, you know, there's a very interesting excerpt. Maybe we'll take it up someday, and it has wonderful vocabulary, guys. काफी अच्छी vocabulary है इसके अंदर, आपको काफी सारे शब्द सीखने को मिलेंगे just from reading a few chapters of this. So in the very first part, one of the protagonist here, you know, of the book makes an argument that the only thing that is different between space and time is that in case of space we can move around back and forth, left and right, up and down, सब कुछ कर सकते हैं, but in case of time we are kind of fixed on almost like एक एक ट्रॉली पे हमें बिठा दिया गया और वो हमेशा एक ही डायरेक्शन में जाएगी और एक ही रेट से जाएगी. Although Einstein has questioned that now, if it is going at the same rate. Anyhow, we'll not go into the physics of all of this, but the point is like temporal relates with anything that relates to time. Okay, the अच्छा ये इसका एक meaning हो गया. Okay, so anything that relates to time is one of the meanings of temporal. Another meaning of temporal could be that anything that relates to worldly concerns, right? मोह माया की बात है कि अच्छा ठीक है यार दुनिया में क्या चल रहा है, kind of to some extent not synonymous, but कुछ हद तक something that is a materialistic outlook, right? कि okay ठीक है, more concerned with the material world, what's going on. अच्छा ये हो गया, इसने ये बोल दिया, okay ये है कि नहीं, वो चाहिए होगा, something like that. Okay, so that's temporal for you. That's the second meaning. वो भी आपका एक meaning रहता है temporal के लिए. Then let's move. From temporal, you must have heard of tempo. Have you tried this? Sometimes, oftentimes, you know, the music that you're listening to allows you to change the tempo, right? The tempo of the sound of the rhythm, right? So what happens is whenever you increase the tempo, वो काफ़ी it will seem like you know that is playing on fast forward. Fast forward नहीं, fast forward में तो आप you try to used to be a method to jump to the next song when we जब हमारे पास ये devices नहीं थे, when people still used to use cassettes. But in this case, tempo would be like it will seem like the person is singing very fast. The music will you'll hear the sounds very fast. Just try this sometime. Like increasing the tempo increases the pace at which the song is being played, and decreasing the tempo decreases the pace at which the song is being played. It almost like it almost seems like that you're increasing the rate at which time is passing for that song, right? So tempo comes from time again. तो वहाँ पे बहुत ही जल्दी जल्दी वो प्ले करते हुए दिखेगा आपको. Otherwise, if you decrease it, it will seem to have been slowed down in time. Okay, so that's tempo for you. Then next term that we have here is contretemps. Contretemps is also an interesting term. In fact, it's one of the terms जो कि यूज होता है काफ़ी बार, आपके ये वोकैबुलरी के एग्जाम्स में भी काफ़ी बार आ सकता है. सो बाकी शब्द भी आपके आएंगे, बट लाइक इसको मैंने आई नोटिस दिस यू नो वर्ड क्वाइट ऑफन हियर इन वोकैबुलरी टेस्ट अक्रॉस वेरियस टाइप्स ऑफ एग्जाम्स. सो कॉन्ट्रेटेंस बेसिकली इज अगेन हैज, इसके दो मतलब हो सकते हैं. इट कैन हैव टू मीनिंग्स. वन इज काइंड ऑफ अ डिसएग्रीमेंट, right? Situation when your point of view is contrary to another person's point of view, right? So kind of a disagreement situation. That is the first meaning. The second meaning that contretemps can have, let me note that down here, would be kind of an embarrassing situation, an unexpected or embarrassing situation. Okay. So चलो first meaning की बात करते हैं. If you keep getting into contretemps with a certain person in your group, that means कि हर बात पे आपका उनसे कुछ ना कुछ disagreement होता रहता है. You're always at contretemps with whatever that person says. Maybe you have a fundamental there's a fundamental difference in the way you see things and as compared to the way they see things, right? So you're always at contretemps with them. However, अगर if I talk about the second meaning here, then you can say for a person, let's say ऐसा आपको कोई दोस्त है who always keeps getting into embarrassing situations, right? जहाँ पे कुछ ना कुछ इधर उधर से उससे गिर जाता है or something. They kind of like a little gauche, right? By the way, that's another term. But anyways, they're kind of like not very, you know, they keep dropping stuff, they keep stumbling into stuff, right? Kind of थोड़े से उस तरह से हैं. So that's a gauche is a word, by the way, for them. So for them, you can say that for let's say Roger, let's say this friend's name is Roger. For Roger, life is just a series of one contretemps after another, right? That means they keep getting into embarrassing situations one after the other, right? So that's gauche for you, or contretemps for you. Okay. This also reminds, अच्छा contretemps से, by the way, इसका जो roots है guys, इसके जो the second part of obviously temps comes from tempo, or tempo that stands for time. The first part of this Contrary actually comes from, let me note this here. Contrary is a French term that stands for against. Okay, so against time, right? So that means a disagreement would be like, well, uh, in case of a disagreement, it would just it's about the way the word has evolved into its new into a kind of a different meaning, right? It just stands for, well, a disagreement in a certain time between two people. So far as embarrassing situation is concerned, like something embarrassing happening at the wrong time, right? Something that happens against the time, or something that happens when it should not have happened, right? That's kind of a definition, kind of a way of defining how it will lead to an embarrassing situation, right? So that's contra tense for you. कॉन्ट्रा अगेंस्ट, इससे आपके काफ़ी सारे अलग वर्ड्स भी आ सकते हैं. यू मस्ट हैव हर्ड ऑफ कॉन्ट्रडिक्टरी, right? So contradictory opinion, if a person has a is trying to contradict you, dict stands for to speak or to say something, right? To contrast, that means they're speaking against you. Again, contra will come from probably a common root, a root that is common to contrary in French here, and maybe is Latin in nature. We'll go into the contra root in the upcoming sessions, but contradict would stand for like to say something that is against you. To contradict someone is to say something that is against their point of view. Okay, so that's contradict. You also have controversial then. Controversial is another word. Controversial is something that where people have a lot of different opinions, right? There's always some, like the media people will always be looking for controversial topics, right? So they can have more and more engagement from the audiences. कि कोई ये बोलेगा, कोई ये बोलेगा, and so on and so forth. What they are looking for is just engagement. Anyhow, let's move on to the next word, which is also quite interesting. Extempore. So आपके schools में, you know, or maybe in colleges as well, you know, you'd have these competitions, you know, which would be considered as extempore competitions, and the weird nature, not weird, like it was actually interesting. Nature of these competitions would be that you'd be required to speak on a topic. आपको किसी topic पे बोलना होगा. You'll be required to speak on a topic. However, you will get no time at all, right? You get hardly any time to prepare for it. Like it's not like you've been given a topic and बाद में you take a day and sit down and write an essay on the topic and then come and you know, talk about it, or say you know, talk about the topic. That would be considered as elocution, by the way, right? Those would be your elocution competitions, right? So which comes from the word eloquent. To be eloquent is to be able to speak in terms which are lucid, at the same time rousing or impactful to the audience, right? So eloquent. Mark Antony's speech in Julius Caesar comes to mind. We'll go into eloquent later on. जब लोग loqua वाले word discuss करेंगे तो we'll go into that. So those will be elocution competitions. Extempore competitions would be like where you are not, where you don't get time to prepare, right? You have to do it without preparation, and that's what extempore stands for. To have acted or spoken without preparation, spontaneously, on the spot. Okay, so X is a root that will stand for out or out of time, right? And tempore obviously comes from tempore obviously comes, the later part obviously comes from tempore, that stands for time, right? So extempore would mean something that you're supposed to do without having had any time on your hand, right? When you go out of time, when you have to do it like on the spot, you could not prepare for it, right? So that's extempore for you. There's another term, एक last term discuss कर लेते हैं. You must have heard of a tempest, right? What is a tempest? Tempest is the term that is used for a violent storm, right? कोई भी एक तूफान आता है तो उसको tempest बोला जाता है, right? And it's very interesting how this has derived, how tempest, which stands for a storm, a violent storm, also derives its meaning from the same root, temp. Okay, and the story goes something like this. Not really a story; it's more about how it evolved. So earlier, so temp used to stand for you know, at first it used to stand for time, and उसके बाद फिर evolution के साथ the word evolved into standing for a period of time. Okay, a period of time. And then as things went on, ये period of time आपका change होके बन गया period of weather. Okay, period of weather. And then gradually that period of weather changed into bad weather. Okay, so you can see how words can sometimes take meanings which are totally quite different, which don't seem to have any relation whatsoever with what their original meaning was, right? So that's how temp also evolved into tempest, which means a violent storm or a bad weather, extremely bad weather. Okay, so that's about it, guys. So far as today's the words for today are concerned, let's move on to the next part. So in this part of the video, guys, again, you can simply pause the session, and go through the word usages, sentence usages of each of these words, which have been taken from reliable sources. It will help you get a better sense of how these words can actually be used in as part of sentences. Okay. And this is the part, guys, where you can test yourself. You just need to find the correct order of sentences on the right side. You know, shuffle them and find the correct order of sentences so that they match the words on the left side, which are fixed. Okay, and you can also attempt this via Google form, the link to which has been put in the video description. And finally, these are the words, roots and words that we studied today on a primary and secondary basis. Okay, you can again pause the video and revise these if you want. Finally, guys, I'm Anupam Mishra and I'm Lucknow alumnus. These are my areas of work and expertise. These are the brands that I've worked with, and these are my CAT credentials. I've also worked as an academy educator in the past, recognized by the Johnny Ive Award for best course design and delivery. And yeah, so that's about me. Sluggers, guys, we are a growing channel. मैं यहाँ पे काफ़ी सारी जो दिक्कतें हैं यहाँ पे टेस्ट प्रेप में मैं उनको एड्रेस करने की कोशिश कर रहा हूँ स्लगर्स के द्वारा एंड बिकॉज वी आर अ ग्रोइंग चैनल हमें आपके पूरे सपोर्ट की ज़रूरत होगी. तो अगर आपको हमारा कंटेंट और डिलीवरी अच्छा लगता है देन डू like and subscribe, like the videos and subscribe to the channel and share it with anyone who you think might benefit from these. आपके लिए शायद वो एक सिंपल सा क्लिक या एक बटन रहता होगा बट फॉर अ ग्रोइंग चैनल इट मेक्स अ बिग इट मेक्स अ बिग डिफरेंस फॉर अस. सो प्लीज़ डू दैट. अगर आप नेक्स्ट वीडियो देखना चाहते हैं तो आप यहाँ क्लिक कर सकते हैं एंड इफ यू वांट टू गो टू द वेरी फर्स्ट वीडियो ऑफ द सीरीज जो अगर आपने नहीं देखा हो तो आप यहाँ क्लिक करके आगे जा सकते हैं. ओके, सो दैट्स अबाउट इट फ्रॉम माय साइड. थैंक यू.